So I'm excited to introduce our distinguished panel of guest speakers. Our first two presenters are Mary and Victor, and let me see if I get this right, Ojakian.
Enough.
Both of them have been dedicated to increasing awareness of suicide prevention since the loss of their son, Adam, to suicide in 2004. They are here to share their story as well as explain youth suicide attempt data in our county, share concepts and techniques about suicide attempts. So I'm going to turn it over to Mary and Victor.
Great. And let's see. Now, you can share at any time. Let's see if I can get my slides up.
Yes. Yep.
And we'll go.
There you go.
Okay, great. So far, so good. So let me I'm going to make a few introductory comments, and then we're going to jump into a bunch of slides that we put together for this talk. And I'll say this about the talk. As I was saying to Mary earlier today, it's an inch deep and a mile wide, meaning we decided we'd give you a lot of different information on a lot of things. We won't go into depth, but in the slides, which Jan has and anybody's welcome to have, we tie our comments, almost all of them, to a link of a source that we got the information from. So any of you can go back and look at any of that. The last several slides we'll go through quickly because they're more meant to be resource slides. And as I was saying earlier, we might go quickly because we want to make sure there's time to answer any questions you have. So I should mention we were asked to speak because both Mary and I, amongst the whole variety of groups we're involved with, are field advocates for the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention, Mary being a former board member of the Greater Bay Area chapter. I want to qualify that both of us aren't mental health professionals. So these are some of our thoughts. Though somebody called us the other day professional advocates, I guess to give us a certain label. But I will remind everybody of this up front and again later because of the topic we're talking about. I want to make sure everybody understands that the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline is out there and available in these counties. San Mateo and the one I'm from, Santa Clara, are both certified, and that number is 1-800-273-TALK, or for the TALK 8255. So let me start in on the slides. We were asked to speak about youth suicide attempters in specific, and Mary and I'll mix and match along the way in the different slides, so you won't have to hear either of us for too long. So let's get going with the first slide, and Mary's going to do this one.
Yeah. So as was stated, our son Adam died of suicide in 2004. He was 21 years old and at college and had never been diagnosed with a mental health condition. This was an extremely devastating loss, as you can imagine. We actually don't think anyone can be prepared for the loss of a child to suicide. And we also think it's normal for healthy people to view suicide as unthinkable. It's most difficult to recognize the signs of suicide in the changes that you might see in someone you're concerned about. But with training, which is possible, you can get educated about suicidal thinking and behaviors and what to do if you're concerned. So we're hoping we'll provide some of that information, as Vic said here. So next slide. after our son died, he was at college, as I said. We went to the university to try to find out what happened. And we talked to just about everyone we could think of, his friends, the faculty, administration, the mental health services, and the police. These are some of the things we found out that had been happening for him that we didn't know, other than he wasn't returning calls like he used to. His friends said he seemed somewhat despondent, but the big thing I want to point out is that the police told us he was the 5th student to die of suicide on his campus that year, and he was the 3rd from his department. So he was part of a contagion. And the school, in those days, they did not inform anyone about this, that it was happening, that there was a suicide cluster. Not the students, not the families. That actually is not the appropriate action now. We know that. So some of the comments people made to us after our son's death, these are some of them. All that these did was tell us that people didn't understand suicide. They weren't meant to be hurtful in any way, certainly. They were meant to be helpful. But people just didn't understand what had happened. So there were things happening in California at that time. There were gun safety measures. Universities, their budgets were constantly being cut, which meant, of course, as usual, cuts to mental health services. And the students that we spoke with said they had no idea how to get mental health services on campus. All of these things suggested to us that there were things that we could do to try to make a change in this.
So I'm going to jump into some of the data. I went through and checked a California database on San Mateo County, though you have your own county suicide prevention effort, by the way, which is led by a person who I think is quite good, Sylvia Tang. And I'll reference that document later, but I went through and just looked at some of the data that's out there on the California database. And I looked at it for 0 to 24-year-olds from 2006, 2015 for attempts, because that's all that's available. And from 2006, 2017 for the deaths, because again, that's all that's available. So here's some of the different things that I found when I was looking, that suicide attempts far exceed suicide deaths. That's a pretty common statement to make anywhere, not just in San Mateo County. As is the next one, there's more male deaths in this age category than female deaths. Is this the case sort of across the board? The thing that was interesting is in the younger category, and by younger I mean I looked at 0 to 18-year-olds, besides looking at 19 and 24-year-olds, the deaths were not quite even, but there were far more female deaths than you normally would see. You average about 7 deaths a year in this category, with the most recent year available, 2017, having 11 deaths. I didn't see any trend really in the deaths. Some of the times, and in California, you'll see this, and with the US data, you'll see this, it's a cascading upward effect. But I didn't find that in San Mateo County. The most common means are hanging and suffocation and firearms. We mentioned this because when we say a few things later, it's to keep that in mind as things you want to restrict access to. And in terms of the attempts, it's predominantly female, which matches up with most of the national and state data. And the attempts, let's see, I said there's an increase in attempts, mainly in females, over a period of time in this data that's available. And then the comment that in terms of attempts, the most common means, which is the terminology that's used in suicide as opposed to method, is poisoning, and it's followed by cutting and piercing. And then I make this point at the end, and that is because it's commonly pointed out that not everybody who dies of suicide has a mental health condition, but that statement should be qualified by the fact that not everybody is diagnosed with a mental health condition, as us at NAMI understand. If it wasn't mentioned or you didn't see it, by the way, in our bios, I'm the NAMI co-president of Santa Clara County's NAMI, and our executive director, by the way, Ravina, has joined us tonight. She's listening to this talk. So that's where we get the data from, the California Epicenter. Any of you can go in and play with the data on your own if you choose to do that. So what should you know? In suicide prevention, regardless of the age, we talk about warning signs, things as sort of behaviors that sort of stand out that you should be aware of because of the fact that they make people maybe more susceptible to thinking about suicide. And these are some of the common warning signs. I mean, if you were to do a scan right now in your search engine, you'd find there are hundreds of agencies that have out warning signs, but these are some of the more common ones, and they should be kept in mind as things that create a greater propensity for somebody to maybe be considering taking their life. The couple that aren't in here that Mary and I were talking about this earlier today is the work from Thomas Joyner out of University of South Florida, where he talks about some different factors, and he talks about people feeling that they're a burden or not belonging, and that those put people in a more susceptible position to maybe taking their lives or thinking about taking their lives. And then this last statement that we put in, that we want to make sure people, it's not in the literature always. It wasn't in the one that we took this information from. But if you interact with a person who's expressing some of the thoughts, like in the first line, that they want to die, the thing that Mary and I have learned, as have many others, is you take those statements seriously. Sometimes people think it's just a cavalier statement that somebody's making to get attention. We take it seriously all the time. And this is the source that we got it from, because this is a talk on youth. We took it from the National Association of School Psychologists. So what should you be concerned about? So if we talk about warning signs, we also talk about certain specific behaviors that people have, and those are typically called risk factors. And this is a series of risk factors that are commonly put out there. Why did I green a couple of them? I greened the first one, prior or previous suicide attempts, because that's by some considered one of the key indicators that a person might be susceptible to taking their life. And recently, somebody asked me to look at a webpage they put up, because I think everybody knows that September is Suicide Prevention Month in the US, and their website didn't have, I pointed out to them, they didn't have what some people consider the key indicator. You can see some of the rest of these. The reason why I singled out bullying also is it comes up a lot with youth, but it's also in your San Mateo report, where the report that's been produced by the Suicide Prevention Committee to indicate bullying as a factor. So, and again, I won't read these because you're going to get this. I pulled them out of a document that I think all of you should go look at, because it covers more than just this little segment. It's called "It's Time to Talk About It, a Family Guide for Youth Suicide Prevention." And it covers a whole series of things, including some that we'll get into later. Not that we use their verbiage, but it's consistent with some of the other comments that we'll make. Okay, what to hope for. So this is where people talk about another factor, and it's called protective factor. And there's a series of things that get brought up that people feel keep individuals less at risk. And they include things like making sure you have effective clinical care, obviously. Some of the things about easy access to clinical interventions, family and community support, connectedness in that regards. But Mary and I were talking about this and singled it out, the skills and problem solving, conflict resolution, and nonviolent ways of handling disputes, because we think that that's a critical thing in terms of an individual themselves trying to work with the situation they're involved with. And there's a source from the CDC, who's been in the press a lot, or in the media a lot recently. That's a source that we got a lot of this information from. Okay, what to do? You want to take over this part, Mary?
So I'm going to talk about means restriction because it is probably the most effective thing you can do. There is a sort of myth out there that someone will simply go find something else, some other means. But in fact, that is not true. When means are restricted, what a person does is seek help. So means restriction works. What it does is put time between the thought and the action. Suicidal urges, they come and go. The most frequent time range, they have studied this, they found, is between the time the urge to kill oneself comes on and the actual action is less than 10 minutes. Now that's shocking, but this is the reason, as I said, means restriction works, because you can put time between that thought and that act with making it difficult to access the means, particularly with very lethal ones, because you don't get a second chance if you've used a very lethal means. And as I said, I don't remember saying that actually, most who have attempted suicide once, they don't die by suicide. That's not what happens. They will seek help. So there are certain approaches to means restriction. You want to particularly secure firearms. The best thing to do is remove them from the house or the living space where the person is. Some people are reluctant to do that, although that is a temporary situation because that's only during the time of crisis. But an alternative is to safely store, that means lock up, the gun. Preferably you separate it from the ammunition and you lock them separately. Other things are to secure potentially dangerous objects like knives and ropes, as Victor was referring to earlier. In the case of medicines, you want to store them safely away from so the person who is in crisis can't access them. And you want to reduce the quantity of medications and as well as chemicals and poisons. If you can make an agreement with the person to help them with their medications and, give them to them as they need them, that's really ideal. Also, limiting the availability of alcohol is important because that reduces inhibitions. And this last one, you wouldn't expect that to be on there. What that's about is cutting. Cutting is on the rise among youth. And so we're paying more attention to it. Cutting is generally done as a coping mechanism, I guess you'd call it. it reduces the emotional pain the youth is in, and it works for them. So therefore they use cutting. But it's also true that cutting can advance to suicidal thinking. So you want to know if they're cutting, just so you'll know that that's a possibility, that they could go to suicidal thinking.
Okay, so how to support someone who you're concerned about. And one of the things we bring up, and I know in San Mateo County and in Santa Clara County, with the suicide prevention efforts, there's a number of trainings going on. So we list a few of them here and note that these gatekeeper trainings are helping providing helpful questions, amongst other things, besides going through some of the stuff we've already gone through. Why did we green this in? Remembering it's to let you know there's certain assumptions made about a person who's thinking of taking their life. A lot of them I find incorrect, but one of the things that everybody should be aware of is a person's really trying to overcome a level of pain that they're dealing with, that frankly they're having difficulty trying to overcome. So it's something to keep in mind. Frequently youth will say, I really did not mean it in terms of attempting to take their lives. But that isn't a signal for you to not be vigilant, or anybody who's associating with a person who's thinking of taking their lives. So here's some behavioral approaches that we recommend, or out of the literature we took, that tells you maybe how you should behave around a person and interact with them after they've attempted to take their life. And I don't think I'll list them off. We're going a little longer than I thought, though we started a little bit later, and I said I want to make sure we have time for your questions and answers. So this is a group of things that are available to you, and this is the link you can get them from. So be aware of some of these techniques. I want people to know about, Mary and I were talking about this, and a lot of people don't know about it, that the Joint Commission a couple of years ago put out a set of recommendations under this National Patient Safety Goals, this 15.01.01. And there's a group of things. The Joint Commission accredits hospitals. My understanding is almost all hospitals in California are accredited by them. They've put out these recommendations saying, if you want to keep your accreditation, we expect you to do this. And the long and the short of this is, without reading it to you, they're required to do work around suicide prevention in terms of screening, assessing, and before they discharge a person, making sure they have a safety plan. If you go into a hospital, if you have a loved one that's going into the hospital, or they're going to be released from the hospital, you should bring this up with them. That the hospital, is it accredited by the Joint Commission? They're going to say yes. And are they following these recommendations? To make sure that your loved one is safe, make sure that they're doing these things. In terms of being discharged from the hospital, we talk a lot about safety plans, and Mary's going to do that in just a second. But remember that if you have a loved one who's been hospitalized because of a suicide attempt, that you want to make sure that before they're released, you have a discharge plan for them, and that it's got some details in it. And if you want to know what that means, again, instead of me explaining it in detail, that's why we gave you these links. But it's an important thing to do, so that it's not just that a person leaves the hospital and that's the end of it, because it's not the end of it. So Mary will talk a little bit now about the safety plan.
Yeah. So a safety plan, just to be clear, is not a no harm contract. That's an old concept, and it actually doesn't work for the person in crisis. The safety plan is written by the person who is experiencing, or about who has had thoughts of suicide. And it's written with a clinician, ideally. There are 7 steps to it. Each one is progressing more towards a more sort of intense situation. So the first thing is the person writes down warning signs that they might notice when they are going into crisis. The idea there is to not let things get out of control. Then they list coping strategies that they can use themselves. They're just simple activities that will help them not notice the passage of time. Again, think back to putting time between the thought and the action. Then they list people and places that they know are social distractions for them that improve their mood, and they can participate in those. And then if the crisis escalates, they have in their safety plan 3 people they know they can call. Those people know they're in the safety plan, and that those people can help them through the crisis. Then if that's not working, they have their professional resources that they've written in their safety plan that they can easily access. This includes crisis and text lines. And then, of course, they have reduced means, access to means. That's part of it. One thing that now they find is very important to include in a safety plan is the completion of this sentence, which reminds them of why they want to live. This gives hope, and it's terribly important. Now, a safety plan can be put in a smartphone by accessing the My3 app, which is up there now. So definitely have them put it in their phone.
So the next stuff I'm going to go through very quickly. There's 3 or 4 more slides, and I'm not going to go through them in any of the same type of detail as we just did. But just know that these phone apps, including Mary mentioned the My3 app, is available. That app, by the way, was developed by our suicide prevention effort in Santa Clara County and eventually transferred through some different hands. But that was done with people who were prior attempters and some good software engineers helping to develop it. And I recommend people look at it. It has a safety plan built into it, as Mary said. You want people to realize that if you're working with somebody who's a suicide attempter, or you're working in the area of suicide and even in mental health, as a lot of us know, that there's a phenomenon called passion fatigue. And we bring up a few things about it. Here's your local resources. The Herd Alliance, Mary is a part of that. Linda Lenoir is also, I noticed, on this talk, and she's a part of the Herd Alliance. And the 2 of them, with this toolkit that's up there, they helped compile it, and they use it in a contract in Santa Clara County with a number of the school districts to teach people. So this is the San Mateo stuff. If some of you aren't familiar with it, including they have the calendar out there for all your activities in September. I recommend you take a look at. This is obviously us. Then I put the San Mateo link up. Stigma Free, if you haven't been around them, they've got a very active, or she has been an active founder. You have your own school program, and you have Star Vista, which handles a lot of the crisis stuff. And I put up the local hotline number so that if any of you aren't familiar with it, it's in this slide deck that you should take a look at, and one of your other programs. Now, there's a plethora of national resources. And somebody will say, well, you didn't put up, look, if I could put up actually probably close to 20 slides of different things that are out there. But this is the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline that I talked about at the beginning, and that's the phone number. The crisis text line, people have been putting in this application because we found that younger people tend to text more than they call, want to call into the phone numbers. And I put a couple of the prefixes up in Santa Clara County for anybody who's from there that might be on this call. We use the word renew. The significance is that you can then pay the crisis text phone folks and get data about what's happening in your county. I put up a number of other ones, including, if people aren't familiar with the Suicide Prevention Resource Center, the SBRC, it's the national effort. It's just chock full of data and information, free trainings. And if you don't get this, there's a weekly newsletter that's sent out. It's free. You just have to sign up for it. So, and you can see some of the other efforts up here. Okay, this is some of the reading that's out there. Why did I green the first one? That's written for people who have attempted suicide. So it's to help an attempter with getting through their situation, providing them with information and ideas about how to work through their attempt and not having it again. And I go through, I probably have a list of 30 or 40 of these different publications. So I put about 10 in, including this one that I mentioned before, that sort of covers most of what we covered in this talk, some of it in a slightly different way. And then several others. A lot of these ones that say after an attempt, those are done in conjunction with National NAMI. So they're NAMI, partly NAMI developed materials. And then I always put this there. I put this statement in on some of the things that we do. Never allow a person to tell you no who doesn't have the power to say yes. If you work in the area of suicide prevention, one of the key attributes that you need to have is persistence. So thank you, and I hope I left you enough time for some questions. So I'll go back to you, Twee.
Yes.
Any questions of us?
So just as a reminder, if you have questions for Victor and Mary, put it in the chat. We do have 3 questions thus far. The first one is, are you comfortable with disclosing the college your son was attending?
I'll jump. Do you want to say that, Mary?
Yes. No, we don't talk about the college. We don't want to blame a school. All schools were the same. We worked with the college system. That's about all I'll tell you. In California, all levels. We worked with the universities, the California state colleges, and the community colleges, and all have adopted better suicide prevention efforts. So it's a matter of getting schools to understand suicide and to how to support their students. I don't know if you have something else to say.
Well, I'll reiterate what Mary said and add a little something. We went through all 3 California public college systems and got them to improve their campus mental health. We then, because for any of you who have any experience in the public arena, you're always going to have somebody say, well, we want to do the right thing, but we don't have any money. So we went and got the money. We created a statewide initiative that was called the Student Mental Health Initiative.
I think we had a lot of people helping with that.
And it got funded by the Mental Health Services Act funds through a Joint Powers Association that was set up, Cal Mesa. And the only reason why I'm dwelling on it a little bit more is, besides each of the college systems getting money, money was given to the superintendent's statewide association, and money was given to the California Department of Education that created an effort that's still ongoing, and I am still a very active participant in that. And it's done a number of significant things across the state for all schools. So we don't need to dwell on where our son went. We need to dwell on trying to figure out how to change what's happening out there so the students aren't vulnerable.
Okay. The next question was, what is a compassionate educational response to a person who asks how my husband took his life?
I always tell people that the means is not the important thing. You really don't want to talk about means. You don't want to give details in any way of a suicidal death, just because that is not the point. What you want focused on is that they were in great distress. Their mind was not functioning like a healthy mind. You shouldn't call it a choice. Also, they did not choose suicide. They their choice was to end their pain. And it was all about severe pain and seeing no out. And with young people, I do want to say that young people, I'm talking like teenagers and younger, don't, and even our son, actually adolescence, the full development of the brain goes till about 25. So young people don't have the skills that they need to solve problems they're dealing with. That's why we promote social emotional learning in schools. We promote mental health education clubs on campuses, like the NAMI on campus, and what's the other one? Bring Change to Mind, Sources of Strength. There are several now. So children can learn the skills they need, and you want to focus on the health issue, not the means of death.
Yeah. Here's my simple statement, and I'm sorry for if the
Whoever
if
it
the person,
was.
yeah, if the person is attending who had their husband take their life, I'm very sorry about that. My response, the quick response is this: her husband didn't kill himself, an illness did.
Yeah, exactly. That's what we say to people. Our son died of depression. We're sure of that.
So you have another question for us.
Another question is, for those of us who have kids who are not compliant, will not seek clinical help, how do we stay hopeful? Do you have any guidance for us?
That is a hard one. Like I said, I don't know how old these children are, but in the teenage years, peers are the ones who influence them the most. And hopefully their school has supports in this school that are making talking about mental health issues more prevalent, taking away the stigma, encouraging help seeking. Those clubs that I mentioned and sources of strength, wellness centers, those are sources available to youth. In San Mateo County, there's also, I think it still exists, Safe Space. It's a model out of Australia. We're also working on that here in not us, but Stanford.
In Santa Clara County. Santa Clara County, under Steve Adelsheim,
yeah,
they're working on a program it's called Alcove.
Alcove. It's a version of the Australian model. That model is being used in other nations as well. If you can locate a safe space that your children could go to, that's where they would find confidential, just for youth, supportive mental health services.
So here's what I was going to add. And by the way, I defer to Mary not because I'm a good husband. Mary was an advice nurse by training, so and a darn good one. So that's why I let her answer the question first. You're talking about a very difficult situation, and the only thing that comes to my mind as a parent and a lay person is it's not something you can do on your own. So certainly there are going to be people, and we all know this in mental health, separate from suicide prevention, there are going to be people who, are going to resist treatment and help.
Mhm.
And to try and deal with that situation on your own is tantamount to walking a large mountain.
Yeah.
So I think what you need to do is, engage the person's, if it's a child, hopefully they have a pediatrician or a doctor. You want to engage them. You want to engage any other people that child's connected to, who they trust, and try and develop a support network with them so that you can get through to your children. I mean, one of the things I personally, it's funny to say this at the end of the talk, one of the things I personally regret is I think one of the things that Mary and I did well as parents was we paired up our children, because we had 4 children. And so we paired them up. So if a child didn't want to talk to us because we were a parent, with authority or whatever, they had a sibling that they could speak with. And Adam had a sibling that he was tied to too. But, you try your best to create networks and things so that you don't have to do it all
one
yourself.
thing, yeah, one thing I did want to add, I should have mentioned definitely the pediatrician or the family practice doctor they have. You can, if they're under 18, you can speak with the pediatrician or the doctor and tell them your concerns. They will not tell you what they decide to do with your child, because the child will want to keep that private, but you can inform the doctor. And that's an important thing to do, because doctors, if they have a good relationship, can do a very quick screening that will indicate need, and they can proceed from there.
I wanted to make, in case you have another question, and I don't want to cut into Jenny's time. I just wanted to make this comment. And again, if you have another question, I'd be happy to take it. I want to reinforce what Jerry said at the beginning. Mary and I do a lot of work, you probably figured out now. Some of it's been statewide and some of it's been national. We don't ask people to pay us in terms of work around mental health and suicide prevention. We don't want that to interfere with just trying to do the right thing, frankly. But I want to reinforce one comment that Jerry made and ask you all to do something if you can. The comment Jerry made is the walk's coming up. Jenny and I in the past have been big fundraisers. I'm out there raising a lot of money again, Jenny, for Santa Clara County. I'm trying, but it's given the time that we're in right now, NAMI's work hasn't gone down. Our work is, it's gonna go up even more. And it's in a time when it's hard to raise money for all the reasons I'm sure all of you understand. So whether you're in San Mateo County or Santa Clara County, I hope you go out and support the NAMI walk. Both do it in terms of giving money, and in terms of participating. We're going to do a virtual walk. We're all going to walk around our neighborhoods, because it's the money, and it's something beyond that. It's to send a message of the value that we have. Now, the one thing I'm going to ask you to do, if any of you can, is go into the governor's website. Easy thing to do. Go to his, whatever it's called, contact me. When you go in there, it says, give your name and email address, and then it says, what are you asking to be contacted, or why are you contacting me? And there's a drop-down menu, and if you go down and you get to AB 2112, 2112 is still sitting on his desk. How it got to his desk was a tribute, frankly, to a lot of serious-minded people. And what 2112 does is it will create a Office of Suicide Prevention, a California Office of Suicide Prevention in the California Department of Public Health, which they desperately need and had at one stage, but it wasn't statutory. So if you go in, click on 2112, go click Pro, you're for it, and type in a brief message that just says, we need this. For those who don't understand, our suicide rates in California, the chart looks like this. The deaths keep going up every year. And somebody might say, well, the population's going up, the rate. No, even though the rate's not going up significantly, it's going up too. So I would appreciate it if people go into the governor's website, go to the contact me, go to AB 2112 and put in a message. Some people have been kind enough. I've contacted probably 2,000 people, 2,000 Californians or agencies, and a lot of them have responded. He's still sitting on it for whatever reason. He's got 10 days to sign it. So anything that happens now just pushes him to do the right thing.
So I think we have time for one more question. So what is the best verbal response to someone saying, I don't want to go on living?
The best response is to acknowledge that I understand what you're saying. I'm very concerned. If you don't know what they're going through that has gotten them to this, you can ask about that. Usually though, people know something. When someone says that to you, you know something. You can say something supportive like, people who go through what you're going through do sometimes have those thoughts. You want to open up, let them know you're willing to listen to them. You don't want to say something like, you're not thinking of suicide, are you? Because that shuts them down. You want to open them up and know there's someone who will listen to them.
We gave I'm sorry we had to go through things quickly, but you can see, remember at the beginning I said an inch deep and a mile wide, because this isn't a topic. What you asked us to talk about, any one of the slides, we could have spent the whole time talking about. I think so we talked about, we put a little bit of this in under that one section on one of the slides. But the main thing, I guess from my perspective is, you want to, first of all, you want to tell them that, you care about them, that they're important to you, and that you're there to listen to them, and that help is available, and what's going on with them is not something that's not solvable, and so you want to work together and, bring in other people and so on, but you want to stay calm. You want to stay, focused on what they're talking about and not say anything negative about it. It's funny you bring this up, because I got a call, I'll say 2 months ago, where a family their child was an adult, an older adult, but they were going through stuff and they were perplexed by it. And, and the fact of the matter is, sort of went through some of what we're talking about now, and not to leave the person alone, and to make sure that you have things secured so that they don't have access to things that could cause them harm.
If you think it's very imminent, you definitely do not leave them alone, and you get them to help. And no matter how you choose to do that, calling one of the crisis lines, you can talk to them and ask them what they think you should do. But someone who is clearly in a crisis cannot be left alone. Someone has to stay with them.
And one of the things we typically recommend is in the counties here, fortunately, you've got mobile crisis units.
Yeah.
So call a mobile crisis unit. If it escalates beyond that and you find yourself calling 911, and I think everybody probably, or most of you, I'm sure, know what I'm going to say now, don't ask for just an officer, ask for a CIT trained officer. So it's not a guarantee that that officer is going to de-escalate the situation, but it's a far better situation than having just an untrained officer come out.
Mm-hmm.
I know from just my own city, the officers who have trained have de-escalated situations. And some of the times their fellow officer who wasn't CIT trained, has told me, down the road after an incident, what they learned from that, how helpful it was, how it made a difference.
Yeah, and if you don't know what a mobile crisis unit is, that's trained clinicians who come to you to de-escalate the situation, to work with whoever your loved one is.
I'll just add this in too. Why the CIT officer? I mean, over the years, I've heard this too many times, and not just from young people, from adults, where officers, there's no protocol for this, by the way. There's no policy. I've checked up and down the state with different police departments, but what they tend to do is come out and handcuff a person. So now you have a car out in front of your house and a person coming out handcuffed, for everybody to see, and it's humiliating for people. So you want to, it's not to not rely on the police, but it's to ask for the right officer and to make sure you explain what the situation is. Like, we didn't get into form AB 1424, but it's a form that with the courts now, separate from police, or with a mental health provider, or a person where your loved one is being involuntarily detained, where people think that the privacy laws prohibit you from communicating. They don't. The communication's one way, and what AB 1424 form does is it allows you to explain something about your loved one, so the courts or the acute psychiatric unit has an understanding about them that helps them out better. Now, do we steal all of Jenny's time?
No, I think we are good. So thank you so much, Victor and Mary, for that wonderful, informative presentation. So now I'm going to introduce our next set of speakers. We're fortunate to have Ginny Traub and Florian Davos, who are our longtime Parents of Youth Support Group facilitators. In addition to sharing about what the Parents of Youth and Young Adult Support Group offers, they will share some of the unique challenges of meeting the educational and emotional needs of children with mental illness as they transition to adulthood. So we'll turn it over to ladies.
Okay, it's Ginny and I'm going to start. And thank you, Mary and Victor. Everything you said and all the resources you provided will be immensely helpful to everyone that comes to our support groups as well. So thank you. And similar to you, I'm going to start with a disclaimer. Florian and I are not doctors. We're not experts. We are parents of children who have mental health challenges, and we have lived experiences. And we've been trained by NAMI to facilitate a discussion with parents. We have an agenda. I'm going to go through it pretty quickly so that we can get to the meat of our discussion. I want to give you a little bit of background on the Parents of Youth. It's really a targeted support group for parents of children ages we've seen from 4 through 26 now, young adults. It was started in 2005 by Christy Manuel and 2 other women who attended a support group and recognized that the specific needs for children were not being addressed. So they got trained by NAMI, created a support group, got assistance from BHRS with additional resources for youth, and started the group in 2005. I joined about 4 years later, and that leads into kind of my brief story about my children and my experience. I thought we had a normal family. I have 2 wonderful daughters. I work full-time. My husband's a stay-at-home dad. Yet in middle school, our oldest daughter did a few uncharacteristic things. She received her first B in a class. Well, that's okay. We don't really care. And then I noticed she drew a red line in pen on her wrist. Like, okay, what's going on with that? And we talked about that. And then my husband found her crying uncontrollably in her bedroom for no apparent reason. And then he asked her if she wanted to start talking to someone. So we got her a psychiatrist and he put her on a mild antidepressant. Things were stable for 3 years. And I remember when she was 16, I was at my office and my husband called and said that her psychiatrist said she's been manic for a month and she has a mood disorder and needs to be put on lithium. And I'm like, a mood disorder? What's a mood disorder? I mean, totally foreign to me. So, you know, we could talk about all the experiences we went through between her age 16 and now 25. You know, lots of ups and downs, not a linear path. It's a roller coaster. We all talk about it. She ended up graduating from high school, went across country to college, made it through 4 years. And actually, during her graduation speech, she was chosen to speak for her school. And she talked openly about her disability. So really was learning to own the fact that she had bipolar disorder. Got out of college, dream job in the Bay Area. 6 weeks later, the toll on her mental health, she had to quit, which you shouldn't do as a school teacher. But the right decision, health comes first. As a parent, you worry about spiraling downward, but she ended up getting a new job, a different environment, education policy, worked there successfully for a few years, moved back to Boston. She's now in a master's program in education and really owning her health and doing well and working hard at it every day. But what I didn't tell you is when my oldest daughter was going through all this, when she was a senior, we got a call from the safety advocate from the school because my younger daughter, who was a freshman, apparently had self-harmed at school and shared with the safety advocate that she had been hearing voices. This was total news to us. I think we were so consumed with my older daughter, hadn't realized whatever signs were there about my younger daughter. Anyways, we went through pretty much everything with her. She has a diagnosis now. We went through many, anxiety, depression, and borderline personality disorder. You know, everything, escalating behavior, suicide attempts, 5150, outpatient treatment, assessment, hospital, residential treatment. We could go on and on. Again, it's a ride, but I will say it's littered with a lot of successes and setbacks. And I think that's what's really important to know as a parent. You know, you've got to celebrate wins and there will be setbacks, but you just keep going. She tried community college, came home instead of killing herself. Clearly the right decision. She now is 23 years old, lives with her boyfriend in Sacramento. She's working to become a dog trainer with Petco. And I couldn't be more proud. I mean, she, honest to God, is my hero. What these children have to go through with these brain disorders is terrible to watch. And she's my hero with what she's been through. So every journey is different, and I've learned a lot, and I'm gonna let Florian share a little bit about her kids before we talk more specifics about Parents of Youth Support Group.
I'm sorry, I'm technologically inept and I don't know how to get myself on. Someone want to help me?
You're on.
You're on.
You're on.
Okay, because I still see you, Ginny, so I wasn't sure. Okay. Hi, I'm Florian. And when my child had started having mental health problems and had a complete meltdown shortly after graduating from high school, I was, similar to Ginny, floored. I'd seen some little cracks, I'd seen some issues, got him help here and there, but it totally caught me off guard. So the cycle of being hospitalized and being involved in programs and trying to be strong for him and give him as much support as possible, I learned about NAMI. And I started attending Ginny and Christy's NAMI group the Parents of Youth and found it hugely supportive. It was such a relief to be someplace where people understood what I was talking about and could give true empathy and not say things that were well-intended, as Mary had said, well-intended, but not helpful at all. And then I went to I took their free family-to-family course and learned so much. It was such a great tool. It was just what I needed. So my son is now 27 years old. He lives in a home that I provide for him. And although he's tried school and jobs and so forth, his illness is such that he has not been able to do that. But he's living outside the home, and to me, that's a huge step. I also have a stepdaughter who has Asperger's disorder, which is high-functioning autism, and she also suffers from anxiety and depression. She has graduated from college. She's back home with us right now and has a part-time job. So, so we've had a lot of heartache and triumphs in our house as well. I want to talk a little bit about people who seek out parents of youth. Oops, it says my connection's unstable. That's not good. They come to us for different reasons. Sometimes their children, whether they are minors or young adults, have been hospitalized. Sometimes they're just struggling and these parents have reached out to whoever and they learn about NAMI and they call the NAMI office and the NAMI office tells them about our group. And some of them come in the very beginning when there isn't even a diagnosis yet, but they know something's wrong and they recognize they need support. And some people have been struggling for years before they come to the group to help them cope with their child. Some of them are very young children, some of them are older children. We get a lot of stories like the Ojakians, and that, you know, they send their kid off to college and they think things are going well, and they're completely floored by hearing from someone at the school about a psychotic episode or break or something. So we have lots of parents in different stages of their child's mental illness. The very early identification, the chaos that often ensues, the recovery, and trying to be supportive and help their kids get back on track, get the right diagnosis, get the right medicine. And they come to us for support, and we have to remind them, as Ginny said, we are not mental health professionals. There is so much comfort in being in a room with other parents who understand how heart-wrenching this is, the feelings of the hopelessness, the helplessness, the no matter what you can provide your child, it does not fix them, the coming to terms with the fact that this isn't an acute illness, this is a chronic illness, feeling incredibly ignorant about mental health. And then when you finally learn how restrictive the resources are and how there is no one program fits all, and there isn't enough support out there, which is why we have to write our governor and get as much backup support as we can. So, you know, they come, and the goal is to not let the parents give up hope, and so that the parents can be pillars of support for their children. I totally agree about the not reacting. You know, the kids lash out on their parents, and you have to be strong, and you can't take it personally. You have to recognize it as an illness. You have to learn as much as you can, because knowledge is power, and the more you understand and learn about mental illness, the better equipped you are to cope with everything that comes with a child who has mental illness. So then we have these kids, and we're trying to help get them transition from childhood to adulthood. And how do we do that? And they're hospitalized, and many of our families, their children have been in multiple programs, inpatient programs, intensive outpatient therapy programs, residential programs, and with the goal of stabilizing them. And then there's that concern about, what about this education that's been interrupted, and how can we advocate for our kids to help them get on track again with their education? The whole issue of 504 plans and IEPs, that's another whole talk all of in itself. I do have a special education background, but all I can say is if your child has emotional issues that are interfering with their ability to learn, then you need to be an advocate and go to the school, get information what the school can provide. Being mental health, it's a little different than other types of learning disabilities. So it would be helpful if you did seek out psychiatric help, a good psychologist, get some documentation to present to the school so that they can write a contract, an educational contract of how they're going to support your child at school. Let's see. Issues, I'm watching the clock, so we have enough time for questions. So similar to the Ojakians, I'm sorry if I'm rushing, but I want to try and get this all in. So issues that come up. All right. The kids are like this and this and this. And I think the hardest thing for me for a parent is when I see my kids prior to the illness coming to the surface, and I go, oh, isn't this great? There he is, or there she is. Oh, this is really nice. And then you get comfortable, and then they're destable again, and you go, oh, yep, there's that reminder. My child really is sick. So super important to know that it is a roller coaster. And you have to ride with the roller coaster. You have to do so similar to what the Ojakians were saying. You have to keep an open line of communication. You cannot judge. They are watching you. They're so in tune to your body language, your tone of voice, your facial expression, your words. They're hyper sensitive, and you need to be calm. Even if you're dying on the inside, you need to be calm. You need to listen. You need to acknowledge what they're telling you, even if it's irrational, so that they feel it's safe to talk to you. And that helps them wind back down. And it also helps them accept help from professionals, from whoever. Very important to keep trust and communication going. What do these kids do when they're in pain? Incredible pain. They abuse drugs. They abuse alcohol. They self-harm. They don't like being told what to do, and they will refuse to take their medications. And we get parents all the time at their wits' end, not knowing what to do. What can we do? What can we do? How are we going to get him to take his meds? Excuse me. Then we have the issue of siblings and other family members. And I'm sure anyone who has more than one child recognizes that they kind of neglect the healthy kid because so much energy is going into the sick child. And then the healthy child starts maybe feeling a little left out and needing more. And as parents, we feel like we give and we give and we give, and there just isn't enough of us. And that is true. Actually, it's true. We can't be all things to all people, so we're just going to have to accept that. Let's see. Kids lash out. A lot of these mental health diagnoses involve rage and anger. And anger really is usually just a symptom of incredible fear. Just as we are afraid for them, they are afraid. So we can't take it personally when they lash out at us. We have to recognize it as deep pain and a great amount of fear. That's just manifesting itself as anger, I think. Let's see. Hospitalizations. 5150 is an involuntary hospitalization when it becomes apparent that they are a danger to themselves or possibly others. And then once they're in the hospital, they get evaluated, and it is then determined whether they stay longer and they're held there or if they get released. There are a lot of programs and medical treatments, but I think what's so valuable about the Parents of Youth group is parents don't get the amount of support they need to get. I know from my experience, I was involved in family therapy while my child was hospitalized and while I was in the intensive outpatient program. And that was great. The family therapy was great, but I was exhausted. I was working. I had a husband and other children, and I didn't feel like I was getting what I needed. I was getting information that my child needed. And so the group was very, very helpful in helping me address my grief and my fear and my anxieties. So your child's on the cusp of turning 18, and suddenly they can make all these decisions for themselves, and that terrifies parents as well. I would encourage anybody, if their child was amenable to it, to get a durable power of attorney for healthcare and possibly a durable power of attorney for their financial needs as well. And that way you stay engaged and keep it all positive with your child, that you're part of their team and you're on their side. And setting boundaries, that's a tough one. A lot of these kids, when they act out at home, we have parents who are kind of freaked out by either their child isolating a great deal and never coming out of their room, never bathing, never picking anything up, or having big angry episodes and outbursts and damaging things. So boundaries is a tough one, because we're constantly in a position to set up realistic expectations and boundaries. And if we're a little too rigid, again, we lose that trust with our child. So there is no hard and fast rule to boundaries. Part of it is what you can tolerate in your home. Part of it is keeping your other children safe as well. And that has to be a fluid process. I think if your child is fortunate enough to give college a try, let's talk about with them whatever mental health support services, as limited as they are right now, are available, so they know. Let's go there and meet the disabilities office, the counseling office, and if they can get any accommodations, which frequently they can, if they have a diagnosed mental illness, they can get some accommodations like extended time and breaks and so forth. So Ginny, why don't you talk about things that we know that have worked for us and some of our participants?
Sure. So that was great. I mean, I think it gives you a flavor for some of the unique issues related to younger children and young adults. And believe me, all of them come up at our support group. So things that have worked for us, because our time is limited here, I am just going to read the list of, how many do I have? 11, and we can maybe send them out after. First and foremost, I think Florian and I both agree, it's important to educate yourself on mental illness so you have realistic expectations and you recognize it as an illness. The second is listen to and validate your children's feelings. You know, we are parents. We want to fix everything. As soon as they tell us something, we want to fix it. Here's some solutions, let's brainstorm. And they really just want to be listened to, heard, and validate how they're feeling. So start there. For parents, surround yourself by those that understand and are supportive. It's really hard. Sometimes you tell a family member and they're like, what do you mean your child doesn't get out of bed to go to school? Just get them out of bed and make them go to school. It's like, it's not that easy, you know? I mean, so it's really important, as hard as it may be sometimes, make sure you're surrounding yourselves by people who get it. For me, what was helpful was to document my journey or the facts. I did this online, but it really helped out later on when, you know, I sent my daughter to residential. They're like, who the doctors, when were the hospitalizations, reactions to medication, blah, blah, blah. And I thank God that I had kept records on all that. Another one, forgive yourself and reject guilt. I know this is one of our principles of support we review every month. So important. And a lot of parents feel blamed for their child's illness, and that's not correct. The children have brain illnesses. So forgive yourself and reject guilt. Also, something I like to say is follow your gut. I mean, there are so many experts, get all the expert opinions, listen to people, digest it. but sometimes when it comes right down to it, you know your child best and, you know, are the integrator amongst all these doctors. And sometimes you just need to follow your gut. Another one, become an advocate for your child. Like it or not, you will become an advocate for your child. You pretty much have to fight everyone, fight the school, fight for the doctors, the accommodations, the insurance, for better care. So become an advocate. And then also be easy on yourself. You know, this is hard and we're in it for the long haul. And so as Florian said, you know, acknowledge our own grief and, you know, just do it at your own pace. All of us as parents go through our own journeys. Try to stay positive, celebrate the little wins, be grateful, even for the small stuff. I mean, I'm also grateful for what I've learned because my kids have mental health challenges. I'm stronger, more patient, less judgmental, more resilient myself. And so lots of things to be grateful for. And self-care, very, as they always say on the airplane, put your oxygen mask on first so you can take care of your kids. Same here, take care of yourselves. And then finally, another principle of support, never, ever, ever give up hope. And sometimes it's really hard as a parent, but as a parent that's been going through this for 10 plus years, I'll never forget when my youngest daughter wrote me a card that said, "Thanks for never giving up on me when I had given up on myself." And, you know, we can't give up. It's hard. You just have to keep having hope. And NAMI and the resources they have and the support group are all there to support all of us. So that's kind of it. I want to thank everyone. I want to say something about our Parents of Youth group. It meets the second Monday of every month from 7 to 8:30, currently via Zoom. If you want to attend, email parentsofyouth@gmail.com. We'll send you information about the Zoom. And we have a few minutes for questions, 5 minutes.
Just as a reminder, you can put your questions in the group chat. So far, we have no questions. We'll give folks a minute to enter their questions. Nothing coming.
We covered it all.
Okay. Well, the Ojakians gave so much information. It was so useful. So thank you.
All right. So thank you, Florian and Jenny. With all the presenters, oh my gosh, my heart, my heart just goes out to all of you. It's just what the journeys that you guys have and will continue to have. All right, so we will end the meeting with announcements. We have our education coordinator, Jen Fuller, who wanted to provide a few announcements. Jen, you there?
Yes, I'm here. Thank you, everybody, for such a great evening. It's exciting for me to hear from Ginny and Florian because I've been helping to support them in recommending people to join their group. And so it's a pleasure for me to hear more about them, as well as hear their stories and about the people in their group. So I've enjoyed that very much. Thank you. I just want to give a couple of updates in terms of our education program. Basically, Florian mentioned Family to Family. And for those of you who don't know what that is, it's an education program for family members and caregivers of those with a mental health condition who want to learn more about the different mental health illnesses.
Custodial account.
As well as receive information on better communication skills and problem solving skills and things like that.
My voice is my password.
We're getting a little bit of feedback. I'm not sure who that is, but The other program that we have is called Peer to Peer, and that is an education program for peers who have an illness who want to get more educated about the different illnesses that there are and to take more of an active role in their recovery process. So we basically have those classes on an ongoing basis, and we do have wait lists for them. So if anyone's interested, you can just email education@namisanmateo.org, and I can get you signed up on a wait list. And then when a spot becomes available, we'll call you and let you know, and you can join one of our groups. So we're hoping to, we just finished a peer-to-peer a couple weeks ago, and we're hoping to get another one started in a couple weeks. And then we're running 2 family-to-family programs right now. And hopefully we'll have one more before the end of the year. We'll see how that goes. And then just a couple of other things. We are working on training more individuals in a program called In Our Own Voice, which is a chance for peers to learn how to tell their story of recovery. And so we're offering training for that. And we're offering training for peer-to-peer teachers as well. And also in the works a little bit further down the line is a training for basics, which is similar to family, but it's more aimed at parents of youth who are suffering from mental health conditions. So it's a similar program, similar process, but it's just a different focus group. So we're hoping to train more teachers for that. And also for more family support groups. Like Ginny and Florian have been leading their support group for a number of years now, and we're looking to add more to their number, and are interested in recruiting more support group leaders. So if you're interested, also please let me know. It looks like maybe November or so we might have a training for that. We're still working on that, but that's coming up in the next couple of months. So be sure to let me know if you have any education needs out there. And again, my email is education@namisanmateo.org. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Jen. I just want to add also that we are looking to start a senior connections group for those 55 and over. So that's something Jen is working on with a few others already in trying to figure out the frequency of the meetings, when they would want to meet. So that's also in the works. And then I know we had Jerry and Victor already talk about the virtual walk coming up, but I wanted to see if Kathy Stern, who's been very important in working on that effort, if you have any additional thing to say, Kathy?
Sure, Twyla. Just a couple of things. Everybody wants to get going. It's 8:31. I just want, first of all, I want to thank all of our presenters for the powerful presentations they made tonight. I think that Tamari and Victor, you've taken your grief and you've just done amazing things not just in our community, but in the whole state, and it's going national. The work you're doing is just amazing, and thank you. And you know, as a board member, I just want to acknowledge again leaders like Ginny, who used to be a board member, and Florian, who keep these things going and are so dedicated. They show up every week. And Liz is another board member. She's a support group leader too. We just have the best volunteers and a great staff that we can then go out with doing a fundraiser like the walk. We can go out and say, we have these great programs. We have these great people that are making these things work. And this is, you can feel good about funding us because we're really doing good things. So it was wonderful to hear all of your stories. I just want to give you an update. Our goal was $40,000 to raise for the fundraiser. We have how much time? The actual day of the virtual walk is October 10th. We are at $35,000 roughly. We are 90% there. So we're probably going to exceed our goal. Ginny, thanks a lot to Ginny. Liz has been a great fundraiser. Those are two of our biggest ones. You know, we should also thank all the smaller ones like me. I'll thank myself. Mark Gosen is managing our walk, and he is a professional event planner and nonprofit marketing person. And his skills are really the reason that we're doing so well. And we could never have done this without him. And in the future, he'll be taking it. He's going to manage the walk day, which is going to be about a 45-minute streaming of just a whole variety of things. Watch the website. We have a couple of major people in the community who are going to speak for us. And the main thing is we have a lot of our own people who we need people to get out and stay in and record yourself and talk about why you're participating in the walk and what NAMI has meant to you, and you know why you're working for NAMI. So there's more information about that. Just like if some of you could record a 30-minute video that we will be streaming all of our different people talking about what the whole thing means to us. We also have another new board member who's getting her son, and well, maybe not her son, but his band. And we're going to have some music from some of the high schools. So we do have connections with the high schools, and they're just going to be a good variety of people. And again, the walk is virtual this year. It's a really new experience for us. If you haven't registered yet and you still want to register a team, we invite you to register for the event at namiwalks.org/San Mateo. And just go to the NAMI website and you'll find a link if you want to do that. If you need any help, Mark is a whiz with the computer. He can help you get set up. Just email him at walks@namisanmateo.org or call the warm line and he'll get a message from you. I just want to say that when we bring our message to the general community through events like this virtual walk, we're taking steps to reach people early and to enhance chances for helping those who are struggling. So the walk is really helping us put our brand out there. It's helping us reach people in the community, corporations, schools, residents, professionals. We're reaching a whole lot of people this way, maybe even better than having a regular walk. But we hope that you will participate, and we hope you'll spread the word. If you have a letter that you're sending to raise funds, send it and ask people to send it on to their people so that the word gets out. We are now our own walk in San Mateo County. We used to partner with Santa Clara County, and the walk was down there, which kind of took it out of our community. So here we feel privileged to have our own walk, and we feel like it gives us more of a voice. And the opportunity really came because of COVID, and it became a virtual walk. So at that time, we had the opportunity to separate from that agreement. And lastly, I also want to say, I see Helene is on here. I want to thank Helene Zimmerman for all of her years of service and her love and dedication to the NAMI cause and program. And I'm so glad to see your face. and we hope you'll be around. And we miss you.
Thank
So,
you.
good to see
Thank you
you.
very much.
Okay, well, that's it. So, Twyla, wrap it up.
All right. Thank you, everyone, and we'll see everyone again in November for the next general meeting. We are still working through what the topics and presenters will be. All right? Have a great evening.
Thank you.
Thank you.